from here. Our next citizen is one of our most esteemed citizens, Mr. Pete White. Everyone start your stopwatches.
You'll notice I kept moving forward all the time. I didn't want you to, either see me fall or use up my whole 3 minutes getting up here. I'm Pete White. My address is 13733 Southeast 134th. And I'm here to, well, a couple of things. One is that I'll really try to keep myself to 3 minutes because this was as a councilman, this was always my favorite day because you got fed across the street with the festival, and that you can't hardly beat that. The other thing is most of my comments that I have today, all of you have heard before except the mayor and Ward 4 councilman. The rest of you have heard. You know what I think about ward expansion. When I had thought that I was going to be through with that when I left the council, but then I found out there was a whole group of people that were interested in expanding the number of wards. And so rather than just go over all the details about it, you know, I used to say, and I told Councilman Stone this past week, that one of the things I used to talk about when I'd meet before neighborhood associations is that if my ward was a city, it would have been the 17th largest city in the United States geographically. I think that illustrates the size of the wards better than anything. I think wards 1, 3, 4, and 7 are, in my opinion, almost unmanageably large. I've heard the mayor talk about his quest for diversity. There's very little that could be done that would improve diversity on this horseshoe that would exceed the value of expanding the wards. There's no question about it. It would give access to minority groups. More seats might bring more ladies, which I think when you look around this horseshoe, it's only one woman. Half or better of the people in this city are female. You don't have one female represent the views of Oklahoma City. We don't see one Hispanic. We see all the wards growing in ways that will make the election of minorities more difficult rather than easier. I think there are going to be some people speak after me to bring some detail to that. But I just want you to know that that I haven't quit that. I think the only thing I was more disappointed with when I left the council was I wasn't able to get backyard chickens. But other than that, the ward expansion was always something that's important to me. I don't want to talk any longer. You guys have to open the Arts Festival, and there are several other people that want to talk after me. But I want to let you know that because of the low turnout in the mayor's race, the few people that voted in the mayor's race, it makes it possible for citizens groups to much more easily bring matters to through the initiative petition, bring them to election than probably ever certainly in the last 25 years, it's never been more likely that it can be done. And I suspect this matter, with the importance that it has, you'll see that if we can't convince the council to take a serious look at it. It's time to do it, and I appreciate the time, and I know you're going to enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Nice to see you. Next up is David Glover.
David Glover, 5437 North Military. The bond just smoothed out our roads. Very nice, much less standing water on the edge. Thank you very much to Eric and everybody. We have a great city, but what could make it even greater? What would signal the most to the people, to the far reaches and people who don't necessarily look like us, that we really care about them? Maybe the best way to include more of them would be in the decision-making process, which ultimately is right at this body. Mayor Holt has already cast a really good tone in all the words that he has talked about inclusion and diversity. But now's the time for possible deeds. Does anybody know, and I'll just ask it rhetorically, how long there's been 8 representatives to the city of Oklahoma City? By decade. You can pick a decade. I know Frances knows, so she can't answer. I've asked a number of people. Some people thought 80s. Most people thought the 60s. It was actually 1927 since we've actually moved from to 8 people on city council. And in 1930, the census said we had 185,000 people. That's 23,000 people per representative. In 2018, we have about 653,000. That works out to 81,000. So we've gone up in population 3.5 times, and we've stayed static. If we would have actually increased the number to maintain the same representation, we would have had about 28 people on city council. So in 66, 67, they actually did change the number of wards because they felt that there was a problem. In fact, the city charter said this. Oklahoma City Charter makes it mandatory if a 25% disparity exists that voter registration between wards be equalized as nearly as practical every 10 years. And that they said that their period of time it's been apparent that there's a substantial disparity exists in the number of registered voters residing in the 4 wards. What triggered what they call this an emergency was 1.14% difference between wards. Now we have 6 out of 8 wards are out of disparity by up to 64%. So about 40%, 40 times, practically 30, 40 times more than the disparity that caused the 4 to 8 ward change back then. But what's really interesting is that the people that, in fact, Francis and maybe Jim will know this, the people that actually came up with this and then really pushed for an increase of diversity was F.M. Petrie, Bill Bishop, and Dr. Harry Dupree. And they gave 3 reasons why the wards really needed to be increased in 1967. And Pete's brought it up in the 90s. It's been considered. You can see some articles that have been written. They gave these 3 reasons. Encourage the greatest possible extent citizen concern and participation in its government and its elected governing body. 2, it should, to the extent of possible and practical, provide for representation of citizens living in various geographical areas of the city. And 3, it should encourage concern, interest, and responsibility on the part of elected officials, not only for the district they represent, but also for the welfare of those who are living in other wards and the overall welfare and progress of the city. We have a great city, and we really have a really special opportunity. It's been brought up for decades, and I think now is the time. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you to everyone for coming down. Next up is Leslie Boerbrake. I apologize if I'm butchering that and your handwriting. And I have to go, personally, I have to go open the Arts Festival, and so I'm going to be turning over the chair to Vice Mayor Salyer moving forward. But thank you, everybody, for coming down here this morning. And Leslie, you are recognized, and from here on out, it'll be Vice Mayor Salyer.
It's pronounced Bonebrake. I'm Leslie Bonebrake, 3101 Kerri Place, Moore, Oklahoma, 73160. I just like to state that the city of Norman has 110,000 residents, roughly 1/6 the population of Oklahoma City, and it has 8 council members. Thank you for your time.
Okie dokie. Hi, everybody. Thanks. I'd like to also welcome everybody here today. I appreciate it very much. Our next citizen to be heard is Jesus Dario Elizondo. Can you help me with the last name?
Elizondo.
Elizondo.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. I'd like to start off by thanking the wonderful city of Oklahoma City because it offered me and my family a safe space, a refuge, a place for us to build a home and be united and grow together as a family in a relatively safe space. And I moved here along with my family over 15 years ago from the beautiful and complicated and tragic country of Mexico. And since that time, arrived here around the late 90s, early 2000s. Between that period and 2010, the Hispanic population skyrocketed by 85%. And as to date, the census data indicates that it's about 18% of Oklahoma City. Having received the earlier part of my education and resided in a predominantly Hispanic community on the south side, also known as Little Mexico or El Sur, depending on who you ask, I've seen the needs of my people go, and my community, go unmet on a variety of levels, institutional levels, state level, federal level, but also at the municipal level. There's a variety of reasons why I think that there's a discrepancy between the services provided by the city and the needs that my people have made, and also the sacrifices. Part of that, oh, I thought the mic went off. Part of that I think has to do with the number of wards, but also the way that the wards are districted. So if you take a look at the ward map and you see where the predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods are and the Hispanic communities are located in the city south of the river, north of Southwest 122nd, and between both highways, you see that 5 districts have whittled away at the communities and placing them as minorities within a district that could be very well be a majority Hispanic district, and therefore ensure greater representation among your ranks. Lastly, and so that argument is a very technical argument, right? The increasing population, and we can look at the data, but I think that there's also a moral argument to be made, that you can recognize the efforts, the labor, the sweat, the sacrifices that my communities have given to the city of Oklahoma. And this wonderful endeavor that you call the Renaissance, the new Renaissance here in Oklahoma City, I look at who is constructing the buildings here, who is constructing the roads here. And I think that we have deserved, just on a purely meritorious argument, a place at the table where you sit today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesus. Next to speak is Lynn Davis.
Good morning. I'm Lynn Davis. I reside at 3201 Northwest 52nd in Ward 2, 73112. I just wanted to reiterate that when the wards and representation from 1966, the council members each represented about 47,000 residents. Today, it's up to almost 80,000 in some of the wards, I believe. The increased representation, not to be redundant, but doesn't really seem to reflect our minority groups, as the previous gentleman stated. And I know I think all of us read the interview with Mayor Holt in the Chamber, Cityscape, I believe is the name of it, in which he said that, I'm going to quote him, we have to better incorporate diversity of our city into decision making. And we feel that by increasing the representation, the number of wards, that this would accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. I think this looks like Samus Fredrickson. Good morning.
Good morning. That's correct. Samus. I go by Sam. I live at 909 North Ellison, right down from the former OKCBS administration building. Just back to these numbers games. One of the numbers that's been put out for expansion would be to go from 8 to 12. Even that on its own would take us to 50,000 citizens per one ward member. If you look at some other cities with comparable population to Oklahoma City, one you can take, for example, is Nashville. It has 684,000 plus and 35 council persons. So they're at that number around 20,000 citizens per council person that Oklahoma City started out on. So I think there's just some catch-up to be done. If you look at this, you take a big step back and look how other cities have evolved and taken measures to essentially maintain representation. I can speak for just my own experience living in Oklahoma City my entire life, that where people are connected to their council person, in my own experience, there's just a different attitude about Oklahoma City and where it's going. Some people I talk to who feel connected have this positive, engaged kind of light in their eye idea about where Oklahoma City is going. Other people I meet and talk to from other parts of the city, it's a complete 180. So I think that speaks to the importance of representation and just moving us forward in this way as Oklahoma City has been moving forward in other aspects over the last 10, 15 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam, very much. Appreciate you coming down. Rena Paulette, go ahead.
Good morning, council members. My name is Rena Paulette Gay, and I live at 2346 Northwest 35th Street, and that is in Ward 2. And to start off, I want to also quote from the excellent interview with the new Mayor Holt in Cityscape. One of the things he said was, quote, "There are communities that have not felt a part of our decision-making and our momentum, and for our city to succeed in the long term, that has to change." I could not agree with him more. And with all due respect, the current council does not really reflect the diversity of our city. It doesn't reflect the various socioeconomic classes. It doesn't represent different ethnic and racial groups completely, such as Hispanic, Asian, and Native American. It doesn't reflect the different ages in our community, and it doesn't, in my opinion, reflect the different priorities and interests that people across our city have. Now, all of those differences among us, I mean, we all love our city, but those kind of differences actually strengthen a city. It make it a better place to live and more interesting place to live. Now, if you increase the wards, that means that by having each one be smaller, you can maintain those kind of different flavors through the city. And as was mentioned earlier, the representation is really important. It will allow more voices to be heard, and those voices will not be as a result of an appointment to a board or something that can be interpreted or perceived to be a favor or a token, but put those representatives of different communities right at the decision-making level. Now, I want to mention another city, and that is Memphis. Very similar in population to Oklahoma City. The number I have is 652,717. How many council members do they have? 40. That's 40, 4-0. Now, I think that asking for 12 puts, in that context, makes 12 a relatively conservative number to ask for, and that'll probably be the only conservative argument you'll ever hear from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming down. We certainly appreciate your comments. Garland Pruitt next.
Good morning, Vice Mayor, City Council, Garland Pruitt, 952 North XXX Road, Choctaw, Oklahoma. It's amazing that we the people have an opportunity to fix, change, and correct some things that are on the books, been on the books, and need to be changed. These opportunities are history-making opportunities. If we can come in here today and address AutoZone, buffalo wings, and parking lots, we ought to be able to expand our thoughts on expanding democracy here in Oklahoma. We call ourselves the Sooner State. Let us be sooner versus later when we see that other cities and municipalities have put forth the effort of inclusion. Inclusion is what it's all about. My organization was founded on tearing down the walls that separate us and divide us. So we as elected officials need to be, has to be, thinking progressively and fixing, changing, and correcting some situations that you have the power to do that. Our kids and our grandkids, they need to see that they had some leadership that sent them in a direction that was beneficial not only for the city of Oklahoma, but the state as well as the nation. When we look around Oklahoma City right now, dirt being broke everywhere we look, and there's not an inclusion. The cranes all over the city and everywhere we look, some progress is being made. You all play a role in that progress. We need you to continue to play a role in that progress. The expansion is needed. It's overdue. You have the power. We're counting on you. We're leaning on you. We're depending on you to make the right decision when it comes to the expansion right here in Oklahoma City. You have that power. You have that influence. You have that title. You have that responsibility. We're looking for you to step up to the plate, make the difference, and be held accountable for Oklahoma. Make us proud by your decision of expanding the wards. Thank you.
Thank you, Garland, for coming down. Next is John. Is it Crawford or Crawford? Okay. Wasn't sure if that was a C or a G. No worries. It's no worse than mine, that's for sure.
Good morning. My name is John Crawford. I live at 1209 West Hefner Road in northern Oklahoma City. So I'm going to start with a quote from Mayor Holt. I'm going to repeatedly and publicly invite your input. Please respond so all our voices are represented. So for the past while, I've been looking around this room, and I've been seeing people who came for this specific issue only, and that doesn't, these words are laudable, but not many people are here, because it's hard to be here. In the morning, when you have a job, you have to be at. I think that expanding the wards is a way to guarantee that communities, that people will be heard. You are the only people who are guaranteed to be here. And so expanding the number of people who are guaranteed to be here, shrinking the wards so that your constituents can speak to you more clearly, and so that you represent them innately more accurately, is a way to get input more accurately in the spirit of that David Holt has championed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down, John. Really appreciate that. And our last person that signed up anyway is Susan McCann. It certainly was. Great handwriting.
Hi, Susan McCann, Ward 8, 1504 Northwest 147th Street. Hello, everybody. One of the statements that is referenced to Mayor Holt as he confirmed his election and indicated some of his desires for the future was that he referred to the time that he spent campaigning and how it exposed him to such a large amount of diversity in our city. I live in Ward 8, and you don't have to go any farther than my ward to see that. When you drive from one end to the other, north, south, east, west, the expanse is so overwhelming, 80,000 in our ward, making it difficult for a lot of people to really stay in touch with each other and to have greater access to the elected officials. This is the first time I've seen my council person, Mr. Stonecipher. It's nice to see you. When I moved there 20 years ago, we were way up north. Coyotes were running around on 150th Street, and now we have numerous apartment complexes. We have smaller, more affordable subdivisions, greater diversity. The school population has changed dramatically. The stores that I go into, I see these folks. It's time to increase our ward size, to our ward numbers, I mean. to give opportunities for those people to become more involved and for us to have greater connection with the people that we are seeing and working with in our direct communities and our neighborhoods. One thing I'd like to add to David Glover mentioned the General Affairs Committee back in 1966 and how they pointed out that increasing the ward size from 4 to 8 at that time would encourage greater citizen participation. It would reflect the geographical extent of our city to a greater extent, and that it would encourage greater concern and responsibility by elected officials, not just for their wards, but for the city as a whole. And I believe that's true. I think it's time, our group thinks it's time to go to 12 wards. The conditions that existed in 1966 exist today in greater form. We have increased and differential growth. We have disparity and representation of our increased diversity. It's important that we take that step as a group, to all of us, for the benefit of our entire city, to go ahead and increase the ward size. We recommend 12 for the reasons outlined today. We know that you all have the opportunity to make that happen in discussions and hope that you'll consider it. We are fully engaged to go ahead and make that happen on our own if it becomes necessary by initiative petition. We're also hoping that you all will consider increasing the amount of time that it would take for us to, in any group that wants to present any kind of ballot initiative, to increase the 90 days going up to 180 if possible, we're hoping for. But regardless, it's time to make this city more manageable, more involved with the people. Greater diversity exists. We need to include that here in our city council. Lastly, in 1990, the council at that time considered 12 wards. That was 28 years ago. We have 650,000 people in this city. We need to get to know everybody and have greater community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming down. We certainly appreciate all the feedback we've gotten this morning, and really grateful for everybody showing up this morning. So we have executive session.
I think we'll cancel the executive sessions and bring those back at a future council meeting due to interest of time.
Alrighty. Do we need to have a resolution for that, or
no? We just adjourn.
We just adjourn. All right.
Can I just ask Kenny one question? So my understanding is that for the first 7 or 8 decades, my understanding is a little fuzzy, but the charter mandated that the council increase the number of wards if there was a discrepancy in the number of registered voters in each ward. And that was the reason for the emergency and the reason why we increased in 1966. We currently have a condition, as was pointed out, we have wild disparities in the number of registered voters, with the least number by far in Ward 6, I think the greatest number by far in Ward 8, but basically they're all not equal. But I understand that it's at some point that changed, so it went from registered voters to population, because it seems like when we did this in 2011, we did it on population. So what does the charter instruct the council in terms of?
No, it's always on population. You're always redistricting based on population.
It wasn't at one point on registered voters? Not
that I'm aware of. And you really need to use the official census from each 10 years. It's the accurate official number. In between the censuses, they take surveys and stuff, but those aren't necessarily totally accurate. So that's why if you're going to do anything, it would really need to be with a new census.
So does the charter give the council the authority to increase the number of wards, or it'd have to be a charter amendment?
No, right now the council could. Article 11, Section 2 of the charter says council can create additional wards or change the boundaries of existing wards.
At any time?
Well, you have to do it with an accurate census. Otherwise, it's potentially could be legally challenged. If you don't have the official census numbers when you do that, you're taking a risk that somebody will come in and say that that's not accurate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right. I think with that, we are adjourned.